Welcome back to Burntwood Workshop. Today we're going to go into 3D engraving again. I'm going to go a little more in depth on running test grids, what the difference is between a light engraving and a deep engraving, and show you some of the different things you can do for getting the right settings. So what I did was I AI generated a haunted house through XTool's AI generation, and I tried an engraving on plywood, and I did it on pine, and I did it at several different settings. I did this one here in a very light speed, in a higher power, and as you can see, it just kind of skimmed the surface. And then we ran it a little deeper, and that came out better. And then I ran it at my standard settings, which is usually about 50 power, 150 speed, and that's with the S1 40-watt laser. And as you can see, that engraved that fairly nice. Now, when you're doing these, if you do a light engraving, painting them comes out really nice. If you do a heavier engraving, they're not quite as easy to paint. So you've got to keep that in mind and do a lot of experimenting. Test grids are going to be your best friend. And on a test grid, this is on plywood. On plywood, you have to stay at lower powers and faster speeds because you can actually cut through, which I'm going to show you in this next one. This is at 33 power at 10 speed, we went right through. So you also, if you're doing engraving, you think, oh, I can't have a fire in my laser. Well, yeah, you can, but at least this didn't actually burn. It just kind of smoldered and just kept going. I kept a close eye on it. Keep an eye on your stuff when you're running these, because I've had fires that I've had to catch real quick. Luckily, I always keep an eye on it, and I've never had anything get out of hand. But definitely watch what you're doing. And as you can see on this grid, you can go from nothing all the way up to burnt through. So basically, by running these grids, the more settings you choose, the better options you're going to get. And what you can do is when you get this dialed down to say, this area right in here would be the spot you'd want to be in, I would select 6 settings between those, and that would dial you in even closer to what you really want for an output. And on like plywood, something really dark like that does come out really nice. I mean, that's pretty cool looking. And then if you're painting, you probably saw this video. That's how much you can change your engraving to make it look nicer. And what we're going to do a little later is I'm going to try to paint this, and at the end we'll see if it was a success or a failure. So we've got an image that we generated through XTool's AI generation, haunted house. It's Halloween, so I figured I needed that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a rectangle, and we're going to make a rectangle, and we're going to pick a fairly intricate part of the design that we want to see what it's going to look like. And I would maybe pick this, just because. All right, so we've picked this. Now this is what we want to do our test grid with. So we're going to take this, we're going to hit create a mask, and we're going to hit done. So there's our test grid of what we're going to do here. I don't know. I think that might be the darkest part of it. It might cause us some funkiness. I think we had our most dynamic. This is the majority of what the house looks like. So this is what we're going to use for our test grid. So we're going to take this and we're going to create a mask. We're going to hit done. And we're going to take this and we're going to make a material test array. And with plywood, I don't go any higher than 33 power. I think starting at 10 is fine. I'm going to add an extra column so we get a good choice of settings. And once that catches up, we'll pick the next one. Okay, so we got 6 and 6. Our max speed, 600, is way too fast. I wouldn't go much over 300.
So we're going to pick 300. And that should give us a really good range for our test grid. And now we just got to wait for it to catch up so I can hit done. Okay. And there's our test grid. And now we just got to wait for it to catch up again. It'll catch up eventually. There we go. All right, so there's our test grid. And I would kind of like to make that maybe, we'll leave it at 5 inches. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run that on our piece of plywood, and we're going to see what we get for our best settings. One more thing I want to add is when you get done with this, it's not a bad idea to make a square around it. Turn that red, make that a cut, and we're doing 6mm pine plywood, and that will cut this out when you're done. And if you wanted to, you could even put a little hole in it so you could hang them on a tag or something. But just remember to do that before you run it. It makes it easier. And now we're going to run it.
So as you can see by my decorations, we are coming up on the most wonderful time of year, and that's Halloween for me. This all started actually about a year ago when I bought my S1, and I got started on this whole journey and got into 3D engraving and stuff. And this 3D engraving is probably one of my favorite things to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to show the different levels of engraving you can achieve. I'll go over some of the numbers. I'll show you some different things and wrap this up and get it posted. So starting on the topic of test grids, as you can see, I do test grids. And you're going to ask, oh, what are the numbers for? What do you use for numbers? Well, it depends. Because as you can see, I do a ton of test grids on different woods. A different sheet of plywood can actually engrave totally different from the last one. So I do a lot of test grids. I do little sections to see what it's going to look like, just to see what kind of detail I get. And I use a lot of scrap wood so that I don't waste good stuff. But as you can see, some come out terrible. This type of wood here does not engrave well. I've tried a bunch of different settings. It never engraves well. Then you go to the next one, and as you can see, that engraves pretty decent. And a lot of times I'll just run this off and I'll know what the numbers are. I don't always write them on there. But as you can see, sometimes I write the numbers on there so that I can come back to those numbers if I'm doing a bunch of things with that design. But each design can come out looking different too. So this is our haunted house done in a light engrave on solid pine. And that's at a power of 30 and a speed of 400. Okay, so this is our engrave run at 40 power and 200 speed. As you can see, it's a little deeper and a little darker. And really gives it some nice definition compared to this one. This one's viewable, but it's light. Now when we come over to this one, even the little details come out a lot nicer. Okay, so here's our 10-inch engraving on pine, and this is done in my standard 50 power and 150 speed. This is pretty much my go-to setting for pine. And I gotta say, that looks pretty awesome. So this is just an example of the different settings. This one here is at 35 150. This is at 50 150. And this is at 55 100. And as you can see, you get quite a bit of depth on that. And these are all on solid pine. And as you can see, it doesn't take much to make quite a big difference on some of these. So this is the engraving done at 35 power and 200 speed. Now, I've already painted this. I don't have a large one on hand right now. But as you can see, it's got a nice engraving, nice detail, but it's not super dark. Now, if we do that same engraving and we do it at 50 and 150, as you can see, it engraves very deep and really dark. All the previous engravings I showed you were on pine. This was one I did on maple. Just to show you how you don't get the lines you get with pine with maple. And it's one of those, you have to run a test grid, and maple gets a little expensive to run a test grid, but if you do it on the back of a piece, you can put something on to cover up the test grid even. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you like it, give a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. I've got more coming. Winter's coming here in Maine, and it gets boring, so I'll probably be doing a lot more videos. I'll give a quick run of some of this stuff so you can see closer some of the stuff I've done with the 3D engraving, give you some inspiration. Leave a comment if you liked it. If you have any questions, test grids are your best friend. Run test grids and have fun. Okay, so starting with our haunted house engraving. This was the deep engrave. I didn't have time to finish painting it, but that gives you a good idea of what we got there. And this is the engraving on the plywood. And these are some of the other things I've done. Most are in pine. The butterflies are in maple. There's our moon. There's the large one. This is what you can do if you paint them. This is using a little bit of the gold rub, the rub-on gold, I meant to say. And there's another one. And I've got more in the works all the time. Not everything engraves perfect, so you'll get some engravings that don't come out nice or don't paint well. Just keep at it. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.